Welcome to PPL Expert. My name is Tom and I'll be presenting the Operational Procedures course. This course is designed to give you an in-depth understanding on the theory required to pass the CAA theory exam for this particular topic. Despite this, only self-study, commitment and discipline will be required. The course is displayed in the form of a slideshow, which I'll be talking through. Please feel free to pause the recording at any point, either take a break or write down any notes. So the first topic we'll be looking at is the air traffic services. So the air traffic services is a blanket term which covers three main services that we have in the UK. Sometimes air traffic control is used as a generalization, but this is incorrect. We use the air traffic services which cover three main. So we have the air traffic control, the flight information service, and the air ground service. So each aerodrome in the UK will cover one of these services if they're licensed, and we're going to go through all three and what that covers. So air traffic services and what their objectives are mainly to prevent collisions. So no matter what kind of coverage they have, they want to maintain safety. So prevent collisions, expedite and maintain an orderly flow of traffic. So whether that's on the ground or in the air, provide advice information to all aircraft, no matter how big or small, and also notify other organisations of any issues, NOTAMs, anything that could be a safety factor. The air traffic services are there to help and assist us. So the first service we're going to look at is the air traffic control service, which is the most common associated with larger airfields, and they're normally associated with a controlled airspace. And services are provided by an air traffic control officer who are specifically trained to give air traffic control and advisories. And it's divided into three types. So we have an aerodrome control tower. So that's a physical person in a tower on an airfield, and they provide control for aircraft on the ground, taxiing, and aerodrome traffic, whether that's in the circuit or approaching to land. So within the visual range of the airfield, the aerodrome control officer in the tower has control of this traffic. Next, we have the approach control. So this will provide control to aircraft that aren't within visual range of the airfield, but they can be seen on a radar which is on the airfield. So the radar will pick up the traffic and the approach controller can see them on a screen, and they will be able to provide information to them and assistance in any manner for this type of service. The last type is the area control center. So very similar to the approach control, but they will provide air traffic control to en route traffic. So for traffic that is outside of the air traffic zone, so away from the airfield, and they will be coordinating traffic routing nearby the airfield from A to B, giving them airfield information or QNH settings, so pressure settings, anything that's useful for traffic transiting nearby. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at the air traffic control services and ATC call sign suffixes which are assigned with each station. So each station has a name derived where it's from, so the location that each service is located, followed by what they're offering. So whether it's ground, so the first one on the list is Birmingham, so that's the location, and then ground, so a ground controller offering guidance and control to aircraft solely on the ground. Then we have Birmingham Aerodrome Control, so this is the tower, and they're called Birmingham Tower. Again, the suffix is the location first of all, and the tower is what kind of control they're offering. Then we have Cardiff Radar Approach. So again, Cardiff's location and radar approach, so offering a service to aircraft that are not in the vicinity of an aerodrome, that are seen on a radar screen, and they'll be known as radar, so it's Cardiff Radar. Heathrow Approach Control, so Heathrow, again the name. Approach control, so if it's a busy radar, they'll split the frequencies into approach and departure, so we have aircraft coming into the aerodrome, and we also have aircraft leaving the aerodrome. So aircraft coming in will speak to approach, and aircraft leaving will speak to departure. So if it's a busy aerodrome, you'll speak to one or the other, like Heathrow. So Heathrow approach. The last one is Brize Norton Control Zone. So Brize Norton, which is a military base, they have a military air traffic control area, and it's a big controlled airspace. But the controller controlling this area, and you refer to it as a zone, and so it'll be Brize, the location, and then the zone. So you can see for each if each ATC unit, there's a location, and then there's the station that what's being provided, so whether it's ground, tower, radar, or one of the other radar services, or approach or zone. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is the lower airspace radar service. So some radar-equipped air traffic control units are able to offer a lower airspace radar service. Okay, so this will be for aircraft generally lower down, so below 10,000 feet. Because there's so much traffic, they split it up so the traffic controller can deal with aircraft lower down or if they're higher up. So they provide traffic with radar-based traffic, so they'll be able to see them on a screen, and they can give them information, whether that's QNH information, or they might be able to offer other traffic information, such as a traffic service, which we'll go into shortly. But it also depends on the controller workload. So if they're not very busy, they'll be able to offer more services than if they're very busy, where it could be just a basic service. A list of the services provided, such as whether they can offer a basic or a traffic service, will be found in the AIP, which is a document listing all the different stations in the UK and what services they provide, the Aeronautical Information Publication. So as an aircraft, if we find ourselves outside controlled airspace, whether that's an aerodrome or controlled airspace up in the air, we legally do not have to speak to a flight information service. However, it's strongly advised because they do offer us some good information, and we're going to have a look at what kind of services they can provide depending on what we require and what they can offer and the base they're at. And they're as follows. So we've got a basic service. They can be offered by air traffic control or flight information service. A traffic service. So the basic service will just give us just basic information like QNH and the runway if it's an aerodrome. The traffic service will give us this information, but it would also tell us if there's any traffic to be noted. In order to do this, it needs to be offered by a radar-equipped air traffic control unit. So they need to have a radar to be able to see where we are and where other traffic is. Next one's a deconfliction service. So again, it needs to be offered by a radar-equipped service, but it's only for IFR traffic. So it won't be affecting us generally as PPL students. But not only will they tell us where other traffic is, but they will also give us a heading and an altitude to fly to avoid this traffic at all times. And lastly is a procedural service. And lastly is a procedural service offered by air traffic control to flight, again in IFR. So if there's no radar at an airfield, then they can offer a procedural service which will keep us clear of other traffic without being able to see them on a radar. So we're going to go in a little bit more detail now about each of those services and what they can provide. So the first one was a basic service. So this could be offered by nearly all ATS units, air traffic services, and this is what they can offer us. So advice and information, so like regional pressure settings, the wind where they are, anything to be aware of like NOTAMs or something like that. And it can be offered to both VFR and IFR traffic, but only in VMC, so visible meteorological conditions. Okay, so we have to be inside of the ground. Traffic information may be provided, but should not be expected. It's a basic service, so they're not obliged to tell us about any other traffic. But if they have the capability to do so, they will. If they're a radar-equipped service, then they'll be able to see traffic. So if there's a collision looking like they may give us that information, but they're absolutely not obliged to. If there's no radar equipped, then again they can tell us about other traffic from reporting positions, but they can't see it on a radar. But most of all, the pilot is responsible for the traffic and terrain clearance, so it's our responsibility. It's not the air traffic controller's responsibility to keep us away from terrain or traffic. So the next one we're going to look at is the traffic service. A traffic service is based on radar. So as I said before, to have a traffic service, it needs to be with a unit that has a radar, and it has, which is normally from aerodromes with controlled airspace. So what they'll be able to do is we offer a traffic service. They'll also give us the basic information, but they'll be able to see us on their radar moving. And if they see any other traffic which is near to take effect, they can tell us where that traffic is so that we can avoid it. And again, it's offered to both VFR and IFR traffic. And the controller may provide headings and a level as an advisory to avoid it, but they can't tell us where to go. It's ultimately the pilot's responsibility to avoid any collisions, not the controllers. Okay, so the next kind of service is called a deconfliction service. Okay, again, it needs a radar because it's radar derived information, and the controller will provide instructions to an aircraft to avoid traffic by a specific margin. So they would give us a heading and an altitude to fly, and we have to fly it if we're under a deconfliction service. Okay, and those margins is be 5 nautical miles horizontally away from traffic and 3,000 feet vertically. And again, it's passed in the form of a heading and an altitude, so they'll tell us what to fly. It's only offered to IFR traffic, so again, as PPL training aircraft, and with PPL licenses, it won't really apply to us too much. But if you chose to expand on your license, then it's something that you could look into. And the aircraft must be identified by the controller before any service can be offered. Okay, so they need to see us on their radar screens, and you might look later on in offering a score code and an ident. So the controller needs to positively identify us as an aircraft, and that will be done by an ident and a score code, and then they can offer us this kind of service. Okay, so we've looked at the air traffic control, the first type of the air traffic services. Now we're going to look at flight information service, known as FIS. Okay, so small airports might have a flight information service, and effectively it's a downgrade in coverage. It's lower than air traffic control, and it's provided by a flight information service officer. Okay, so they have slightly less training to an air traffic control, but they're still some kind of ATS unit. And what they can provide is positive control of aircraft on the ground up to the runway holding point. Okay, so when we're on the ground taxiing, we have to take instruction from a flight information service. They're in charge of us, so they'll tell us where to go. However, when we're in the air or just on the runway, it's actually our discretion. So it's up to us as pilots to make those decisions, and they can only advise. They can't tell us what to do anymore. They obviously give us the airfield information, like any air traffic control unit, such as the runway and the wind, so we know which runway to take off from and what the wind is for taking off and landing. They can give us non-radar based traffic information, so they can give us traffic information based on reports rather than seeing traffic on a radar screen, as they don't have this. And they'll be offering a basic service to aircraft, so flight information services don't have. Okay, so the last one of the air traffic services is the air ground service, A/G. Okay, so this is normally for much smaller local airports, air ground, and it's a very limited service. So it'll only provide us with the essential information. So they'll give us a wind, pressure setting, and the runway in use. Okay, and so it's delivered by a radio operator. They're not trained as an air traffic controller at all. All they are is trained on the radio to be able to pass information which they have received from their sensors and equipment to judge the wind and the pressure. They can't provide any instructions or traffic information, so it's always the pilot's responsibility